Good evening, and welcome to another edition of Making the Case with me, your host, Susan Rodrigues. It is a sad day in our country today. In fact, when I was preparing this program, I started to think about what I was going to talk about yesterday, and I wanted to focus on the positives. I wanted to talk about the plans that the PPP has for our country. I wanted to talk about the programs that we are going to implement post March 2020 so that we can move the conversation forward, so that we can start to plan for our future, and so that we can elevate the conversation. However, since the events of yesterday morning, and then this morning, I was forced almost to go back to talking about how incompetent and incapable the APNU AFC administration is in terms of handling these sorts of situations in our country. And so I wish to begin this evening by expressing my condolences to the family members of those who perished today in that very horrific accident on the east bank of Demerara. I understand that 2 persons are critical in hospital, and I wish them a speedy recovery. But I think it is time that we recognize and we stop this culture in Guyana where police vehicles, and especially those attached to the presidential convoy, use excessive speed on the roadways, taking up 2 lanes, and expect persons, everyone almost, to disappear off of our roadways when they are coming through. And even though we understand that they are part of the presidential convoy, they must respect the roadways and must use the roadways in a responsible manner. They are not the only ones utilizing the roadways, and they must recognize that their behavior is reckless and irresponsible. And so more care certainly must be given, more care and respect to the other road users. And it is sad that 5 persons had to die for the president, for Mr. Granger, to realize that something has to be done about this situation. And so even today, I was astonished, as I shouldn't have been, but I was astonished to see him, Mr. Granger that is, on the scene of the accident, looking quite clueless. You know, there was a clear lack of leadership. He was just standing around, not knowing what to do. He certainly didn't appear presidential. He didn't appear to be the leader, and he didn't take charge of the situation. And a statement never came from him until tonight, when he announced that he is ordering a commission of inquiry into the deaths of the 5 persons. This is a clear attempt by him to deflect blame from himself and his administration, and we don't know what excuse they will come up with for this COI, but you can clearly see from the video evidence that the other car, which were carrying the civilians, clearly observed the siren and the flashing lights, and you can see from the video that the driver of that car applied his brakes and pulled over and almost came to a complete stop when he was hit by the speeding police car. And so while all of the state resources, while all of our policemen and women are deployed to protect an illegal president, the citizens of the country perish in the escalating crime situation that we have and in situations like these. And I was reminded today of David Granger's words after the protest at the Pegasus Hotel when he said that somebody will pay for protesting him. And 5 persons pay today, and thousands of people pay every single time David Granger has to appear somewhere, and the barricades have to go up, and hundreds of policemen and women have to leave their duty to provide and protect for the citizens of this country, and they are now, their main priority now is protecting a president who is unconstitutionally occupying office. And so this brings me now to last week's events, and I will come back to the crime situation in a little bit. I will be joined by a guest later on in the program, and we'll be discussing the crime situation in this country. But let me go for a minute to some events from last week's National Toshao's Conference. The conference was held last week for 5 days, from Monday to Friday. And it is a conference that is normally held annually around July. This year, however, it was held in October, and we suspect that it was intentionally held in October to coincide with the launch of the APNU AFC presidential campaign. And based on the feedback that we got from the Toshaos, and I spoke to several of them personally, they were very, very disappointed with the way that the conference was conducted. Now, the whole idea of the Toshao conference is it's premised on the idea that the Amerindian leaders will take the microphone and they will highlight all of the issues affecting the Amerindian community, and they expect the ministers of the government to listen, and they expect them to offer solutions on the issues affecting them. However, the reports are that the Toshaos were instead given a very limited time in which to highlight their issues. They were specifically instructed not to be political in their presentations. However, they were subjected to very lengthy speeches from the ministers from the government, and their speeches were extremely political. And the entire conference was hijacked, for want of a better word, into being a political campaign. And so in addition to their lengthy speeches and promises to the Amerindian community, they shared out green T-shirts and lots of presents and so on for the Amerindian leaders. Laptops and handheld devices and so on were given out. Also, several of the speeches, the Amerindian leaders complained that the speeches were very condescending. And I make reference in particular to Ms. Tamara Khan, who is an attorney working at the Office of the Prime Minister. And she is the wife of Imran Khan, who's over at DPI. And, you know, her speech was talking about the Constitution and what is a Constitution and why we need a Constitution, and telling these the Amerindian Toshaos to read that they must read and understand the Constitution. Now, imagine these Toshaos are leaders of their communities, and they came to a conference to highlight the issues that are affecting their communities, and they are expected to go back into their community to report back to their people on the progress they made at the conference and the solutions that were offered by the ministers. And they are made to sit and listen to Tamara Khan lecture them on what is the Constitution, and then telling them that they must read and understand the Constitution, when clearly they don't understand the Constitution, because 1066 is very clear that the President and the Cabinet should have resigned on the passage of a no confidence motion. So if anybody must read and understand the Constitution, it's certainly the APNU AFC government. So they use this time to deliver these condescending speeches instead of talking about land titling, which is very, very important to our Amerindian brothers and sisters. The PPP left $10.7 million in a project to continue issuing land titles and extension of land titles. And the coalition government have not issued a single land title since taking office in 2015. They only issued a handful of land titles last Friday. On the last day of the conference is when they issued their first set of land titles, after more than 4 years in office, and after $10.7 million was left there by the PPP administration to continue with this initiative. They didn't address the Amerindians on youth employment. Almost 2,000 Amerindians were fired in 2015 when the APNU AFC coalition took office under the CSO program, which employed almost 2,000 young Amerindian men and women. And this program, they said, was replaced by the Hayes program, which they claimed saw the opening of over 2,000 small businesses in the hinterland. This is a complete lie. This is a fallacy. There are no 2,000 small businesses that have been established under the Hayes program. So the Hayes program is supposedly this small loans program to for entrepreneurs to open their own businesses. But no such businesses have been established since 2015. As one PPP MP said to me in a conversation we had, you can't even find 54 new businesses, much less 2,054 businesses, as they are claiming that have been opened under this program. There was no address to the Amerindians on housing. And as you know, no new housing plan has been proposed. There's been no initiative on access to better water and electricity in the hinterland. Kathy Hughes is now going around boasting about the ICT hubs that have been built in the hinterland community. But in fact, 100 ICT hubs was built by the PPP, and the only thing that was left to be done in 2015 when the PPP lost the election is for the computers to be delivered. And now Kathy Hughes is delivering these computers and taking all the credit for the entire project, when in fact it was the PPP that had built 100 ICT hubs in the hinterland community. They neglected to address the Amerindians on agriculture. So there's been no new initiatives either in the agriculture sector on improving and promoting the sector. The PPP used to provide chemicals for pest control. The PPP used to give concessions on agricultural machinery to help the Amerindian communities and the Amerindian farmers to be more competitive when they produce their food supplies to sell in Georgetown and in other places. All of this has been stopped under this administration. So there are no concessions. They don't provide any chemicals for treatments of pests and so on. So it has become very, very hard for the Amerindian community to farm and to produce for themselves, much more to produce to sell. In the health sector, there's been no new hospitals or health centers built. And that is not only the situation in the hinterland, it's also the same across the country. In many cases, there's been limited or no drugs or insufficient medicines. In infrastructure, there's been no roads, no new roads or maintenance work being done in the hinterland. And then now, their number one talking point, especially for Mr. Granger, is education. So he likes to promote himself as the education president. And the administration boasts about allocating billions of dollars to the education sector. Now they're coming to you to promise free education all the way to tertiary level. But we know that the facts are very, very different, and their actions are very different to what they're saying now. So take, for example, we know for a fact that they took away the school grant, the cash grant that was previously there under the PPP. They are the government that put VAT on education. They have built no new schools. They have increased UG fees by over 35%. There are still shortages of teachers. There's still lack of resources. The school kids in the hinterland community have not been receiving their uniform material for the past 2 years. All they have done is had some buses donated that David Granger put his name on, and we don't know if these buses belong to the party or if they've been donated to the government. But what we do know is that 20 million of our taxpayers' dollars go into maintenance for one of these buses, which is more than the cost of the bus itself. And so that can be easily verified. If you look at the Auditor General's report, you will see that they've spent $20 million on maintenance for just on one bus. That's the cost attached to the maintenance of these buses. So somehow they feel that if they provide a few buses to transport their school children, that makes them champions of education, disregarding all that they have done to prevent persons accessing private education and doing nothing to support the education sector. And now they come and they say they want university will be free and education will be free from nursery to tertiary. These are all pure lies, because if you look at their actions, you will see that they have no intention of fulfilling any of these promises. But it is campaign season, and so, they will say anything to get you to go out and vote. The president also promised that he would find jobs for university graduates within 1 year of graduating UG. And later on, he denied saying so, even though we have it on tape that he did promise that he would find jobs for university graduates. So this is a man that continuously and consistently breaks promises, and then even though there's proof that he made these promises, he says, I never said so. And in this case, he said, I wouldn't say that. That's like giving a blank check. That was his exact words when a reporter asked him about his promise in the manifesto about finding jobs for UG students. And so the PPP, on the other hand, we have a very detailed plan that will be revealed in our manifesto that will focus on, one, access to education, and that means that we will make the admission process easy and simple. We have offered 20,000 online scholarships to improve access to everyone. Two, the education plans will focus on delivering quality education. So this entails paying our teachers a better salary, providing them with better training to improve the quality of the education that they deliver to our young people. Three will be preparation for the job market. So we don't only want students to be trained in vocational skills or academia alone, and then they're not prepared for the job market. As you know, the job market is very competitive now and very ICT oriented. So we want to make sure that our kids are not only educated, but properly prepared for the job market. And four, we have to make it affordable. So we did say that we are working with a plan to provide free university education within the first 5 years. And in addition to that, we are exploring ways in which we can provide tax cuts to private institutions, private schools and institutions, by giving them a corporate tax cut so that they can make it more affordable for kids who want to study not only at the University of Guyana, but at private institutions. And then we have to address the cost of living issues. The 200 new taxes that were imposed on various items that were not previously there, driving up the cost of living. The government is collecting $88 billion more annually in taxes, drying up the pockets of our people. And we are getting nothing in return. So it's not only that they're taking all of this, collecting all of this money in taxes, but we're getting nothing in return from it. And then next year, with the expectation of first oil, if we go back to the Amerindians for a minute, we had Minister Keith Scott say in Parliament that the Amerindians are avaricious, that they are greedy for wanting their land titles, and that they should not share in the oil proceeds. So these are the issues that our Amerindian brothers and sisters are faced with. And in regards to that statement from Keith Scott, there has never been a retraction or an apology from him or anyone else in the government in relation to his statement on the Amerindians. And these issues that I've highlighted, even though it directly affects our Amerindian brothers and sisters, these are issues that are common across our country. And all Guyanese can relate to these issues, the cost of living issues, the education issues, the health sector issues, agriculture, the unemployment, and we could go on and on. So we have all of these issues and problems in common, and we see the lasting effects of it. You would have seen a few days ago in the newspapers that the National Insurance Scheme is grappling with the decline in contributions. And this is a clear result of persons not working, and evidence of what we've been saying, that 30,000, more than 30,000 people have lost their jobs under the APNU AFC coalition. And this, of course, brings all sorts of social problems, alcohol abuse, domestic violence, suicide, all sorts of child endangerment, all sorts of social issues. And of course, the big one is the escalating crime situation, which is inevitable in any country that is facing economic decline. And so I am going to introduce my guest now, but before I do so, I would like you to just have a look at this video. It's a very short clip from the robbery that took place yesterday morning, and when you come back, I will be joined by my guests. Have a look.
Right? May see if I can put in my watch something.
So that was the video clip of the robbery that took place yesterday morning, which left the gold miner dead. Joining me this evening is Gregory Sokol. He's no stranger to this program. He was here previously. Gregory, welcome.
Thank you very much, Susan, and good evening to our viewers.
Gregory is an ex-military officer. He is a father and a husband, and he is very, very concerned about the level of crime in our country, and more specifically, the denial that there is even an escalation in crime from our Minister of Security, Kemraj Ramjitan, and his clear inability to handle the situation. Gregory, I know you're a father, you're a husband, you're Guyanese who is very, very disturbed by this, and you wanted to come and share your thoughts on this situation.
Yeah, Susan. We had discussed this before. The impact of economic decline on the security issues in the country. And we're seeing that, and we're seeing an escalation of it. Within the last 2 days, we had about 9 persons dying for various reasons. We had a big situation yesterday with the minor Dion Stull that passed away due to being attacked by these criminals. We have a Minister of National Security that is obviously out of his depths where security is concerned. His big security plan was to have a 2 a.m. curfew. So I wonder how that is working out for him now that we have this 2 a.m. curfew, and he explained that we will have a drastic decline in crime, and people will be home earlier, and criminals wouldn't have people to attack. So I hope that's working out really well for him and the administration, that they've implemented this master plan of 2 a.m. curfew in the morning. The Ministry of National Security and the security of the country requires somebody at least to understand crime, understand what is going on, dealing with it from a macro level to a micro level. And the thing about the current administration, they have a lot of ex-military officers as advisors, particularly the Ministry of National Security. And I'm at a loss as to why in 4 years we could not have a comprehensive plan for this country to safeguard the citizens, um, to ensure that, I can go to bed at night and my home is secure. I wouldn't have to be worried about people trying to get into my home. If I'm moving from my home to go to work or I'm going to transact some business, I don't want to worry about these things. But the reality of excuse me, the situation is that we have a very serious crime situation, and now we see what's happening with the security forces is something called political creep, which is getting into the security forces, which has never happened before and was not allowed to happen. Now, the security forces are supposed to be apolitical. Apolitical meaning that they're not affiliated with any political party, they're not interested in politics, they do not get into politics because they have a mandate in which they want to fulfill. So the president goes to give a speech at a school, and 140 policemen turn up to secure the perimeter to ensure that concerned citizens who want to exercise their democratic right and voicing their displeasure of what is going on in the country, they're denied that because they have 140 policemen, assets of the Guyana police force, being utilized just to secure, the president so he can make a speech. And then those 140 police officers are at one location, and then we have the bandits seeing that and, having a field day with it. So we've seen it happen in the police force. It's happening in the military, that there's political creep in the military. The government utilizing the resources of these security forces for their own pleasure, for their own, they have it for their own uses, and and as such they're denying citizens protection because it's there for them to utilize for their own purposes.
And as you said previously, that the government has a lot of persons who are ex-military and so on, and you would expect them to at least have a plan. And in fact, David Granger ran on this in 2015. Oh, he's a brigadier. He will restore law and order to the country. He will be the law and order president. And we've seen quite the opposite. And a lot of persons fell for those promises because they thought, okay, well maybe he'll have a plan.
He's
but
onto
then,
something for us.
right?
Here.
But then he put an attorney who is not even a good attorney as a security minister,
Right.
and Ramjatan is clearly in over his head in this situation.
Yeah, and with the resources that we have very limited resources. Our security forces have very limited resources, and for it to be concentrated on one area on several occasions is not very good for our country security-wise. And then we have the advent of oil coming into the country, and we would think it's a reasonable expectation to have that with oil they've started planning, and they would invest heavily in our Coast Guard, or have that capability, because we have the rigs out there, we have the FPSOs out there, another one is being constructed, and it is a reasonable expectation to have that our Coast Guard capability would have been enhanced a lot. Now, we're not seeing anything like that. It's not happening.
There's piracy,
And it gets the piracy, and piracy has always been within this last 4 years a very very big topic, and it's been on the front burner a lot, and the piracy has increased. Young fishermen we're seeing 20 years old, braving the seas to go out there to make a living for themselves and their families. And you will hear the stories from these families that when these young men leave, they're not sure if they're going to come back. Now, that is not any way to live. That is not any way to live, and to have a family living when you're the breadwinner of the family, or where you have a large home, and the eldest child goes out to try to support the family, they don't know if he'll come back. And we've seen that happen. We've seen that happen as of recent. Two bodies turned up and they're still looking for two more. And the thing about it is, that family, one of the families of one of the missing fishermen, they said that they've actually started using their own resources to comb the coast to try to find the bodies. Now, we have not heard from the government. We have not heard from our Minister of National Security. We have a bilateral agreement with Suriname where we're supposed to work together to secure the seas for these fishermen, because the pirates come from both countries and attack and go either way. So we've not heard from our National Security Minister on the deaths of these fishermen. Nobody has gone to see their families, and where's the compassion where this is concerned? You know, where's the compassion?
Yeah.
We have to start with compassion. Go and visit these families, listen to what they have to say, offer some help. Offer some help, you know?
Yeah, you know, even if you're not sure about a way forward, or even if our leaders, sad as it is to say, do not have a comprehensive plan on how to deal with these challenges, the least you could do is visit the family.
Yes.
You know, sit with them, as you said, show some compassion, show some care. A few weeks ago, I spoke about the flooding
Yes.
that took place a few weeks back, and the families that were destroyed, that had their livelihoods destroyed. And you know, somebody called in and said, of course, it's a APNU AFC apologist, called in to say that, oh, the government is assessing the situation, and when they're finished assessing the situation, then they will deal with that. I mean, imagine nobody from the government has yet gone to those persons, and these types of crisis situations are happening more rapidly now. They're coming. First, it was every week. Now it's almost every day. We're seeing a new tragedy, and they are clearly out of their league, and they couldn't even go to meet with those families, to show some compassion, to sit with them. That in itself goes a far way to show your people that we care, and that we are with you, and that we will come up with some solution to try, at least try to alleviate the suffering that is going on around the country.
Yeah. Well, this breach that happened at Maikoni, it happened months ago. But what made the problem larger is the fact that this big high tide that we had, and all of the water came in. I was in Mahaika last week, and the farmers were telling me in Mahaika that they still can't plant. They have to wait until the salt water. They were showing me the trenches.
Right.
The salt water is still in there. They can't use it because they have a lot of rice in that area, and they can't use the water because it's salty. And then we have our Minister of Public Infrastructure walking around, visiting these people, like he's doing something miraculous for the people of Guyana. And this breach happened months ago, under his watch.
And there's clear neglect.
Right, under his watch.
So we're going to start. We're going to prepare to take your calls. Gregory, before I go to the phone lines, you have anything else you want to add before we do so?
Just one more thing.
Sure.
We saw the president, the president, and his ministers, as they call themselves. They're parading around now, calling themselves whatever they call themselves. Went to Linden, had a big rally, made some promises to the people of Linden, and begged for another chance. Now, Linden is their stronghold, and they're there in Linden begging, give us another chance.
Yeah.
In Linden, and promised 150 new house lots and 500 jobs. Nobody asked him, how is he creating these jobs? How is he doing it? How are we going to access 500 jobs? Now, the Lindeners are claiming, that the APNU was God sent, that they came to bring Linden out of this hole that PPP had them in for decades, right? But that's not true. That is not true. If we look at Linden and what the PPP did for Linden, it goes back for a long time. Let's go, for example, in 2002, there was an economic drive in Linden by the PPP. They signed an agreement, the government again at the time, signed an agreement with the European Union for 12 million euros and started the Linden Economic Advancement Program because they realized that the bauxite industry was dwindling at the time and they needed to encourage entrepreneurship and businesses and so on. So they started giving small loans to people and persons were able to access it. Then they built a hospital, $1.8 billion hospital for Linden. Just a few of the projects that they did. They created one of the largest housing schemes in the Caribbean in Amelia's ward. That's one of the largest housing schemes. They built a $13 million water treatment plant for Linden, and they supported the creation of the Linden Tongue Week, where vendors and businesses were able to access, make some money during this Linden Tongue Week. And they kept the subsidy on electricity at $500 for 20 years. When the rest of the country, they were paying $15,000 and $20,000, Lindeners were paying $500, and they kept that subsidy for 20 years. And the IMF recommended that the bauxite industry be closed. PPP stepped in, brought in an investor. Now, could you imagine if they shut down the bauxite industry in Linden, what would happen?
What would have happened? Yeah.
Right. So they're talking about APNU coming to lift the people of Linden out of poverty and whatever they were in. But what have they done in 4 years? Name one significant thing that they have done for Linden in 4 years. Not one single thing.
You also forgot the call center.
Yeah.
They built the call center which employed hundreds of people,
Yep.
which were, these persons were sent home in 2015 when APNU AFC came to office. So like you said, and like I always appeal to the viewers out there, the viewers and the listeners out there, you can go and get the facts for yourself.
Yeah.
You don't have to listen to Granger or listen to his ministers come with their lies and with their empty promises. You can go and measure and quantify what the PPP had done from when they took over this country in 1992, from a country that was not even credit worthy. We couldn't even borrow a cent to dig ourselves out of poverty and out of the debt that we were left in by the PNC, and to move this economy from bankrupt to where we were in 2015, when the PPP left an excess in office. To move it from 1992 to 2015 was no easy task, and you can go back and you can measure and quantify what the PPP did in office if you objectively do so. And so we're not coming to you with empty promises. We're coming to you with real solutions, and I urge people to listen to the candidates who will come and speak to you. Listen to the persons who will come into your communities. Ask them the tough questions. Don't just listen to Granger Nagamutu say, oh, free education, free university education. How? Show us how you're going to be able to afford this. Because if you couldn't even afford, if you couldn't decrease the UG fees and you raised it by 35%, how exactly are you going to make it free now? Where's the money going to come from? And then there is this big debate now about cash grants. And they're coming to you and they're saying $5,000 US per household, which is in excess of $1 billion annually. That's what the project will cost. When in fact we'll be collecting $300 million, which is a fraction of what that would cost. So clearly, another plan that they cannot implement. And I urge people to do their research, to listen to these leaders, to ask the tough questions, and to vote on issues, and to vote for the party that has a clear track record of delivering on his promises. I'm going to go to the phone lines now. Caller, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Sorry.
Yes, fine, thanks. Can you speak up a little bit?
Okay. Okay, so first of all, I'm calling from West Bank, but I'm living in Wales. Now, it's been like 2 weeks ago, it's closed down.
Caller, I really need you to speak up because I want the viewers to hear you at home.
I'm trying to speak loud, but
Yeah.
something with the volume.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm living in Wales, and
Uh-huh.
presently nothing is going on presently. Now, I have a question to ask. Probably you or the other individual next to you could answer.
Sure.
By any chance, the government can go into private companies, like in the sense of like with salary.
If the government can do what?
Okay. I think I'm working with a private company.
Yes.
I would like to mention the name.
Uh-huh.
However, I think they're on the paying list out there. But it's because of this crisis that's going on presently. I think that is what they're doing.
Okay.
That's why they're doing it. So I'm asking if there is any way that the government, whether it be this government or next government or any government, could go into the private company and just set like, okay, a skillman is supposed to get so much pay.
I see.
Get so much pay. Labor is supposed to get so much pay.
I see. Okay, so we have the minimum wage, and if a private company is paying below the minimum wage, then yes, the state can step in and ensure that they at least pay the minimum wage. But that is across the board. There is no security measure in terms of this deciding on the skill set of an individual and what they should be paid in remuneration.
Because I could recall when PPP was in government, I think it was a printout in the newspaper that stated that, okay, a post gets so much, welder gets so much, a semi-skill gets so much, and these things. But now, being at the estate closed down, when people go to work in the morning, it's like 50, 60 people just end up being there to get their job. So let me say something now.
And so they're taking advantage of the situation, yes.
Now let's say that I'm getting $4,000 a day. They rather by taking 3 courses and I give them that $4,000. You understand what I'm saying there?
Yes, it's very competitive, yeah.
Yeah, that's one. 2, this police at the bridge. Who I don't know where this joker that we have for Prime Minister and for Minister of Security, I don't know where he get this knowledge from. He reads too much book or he has too much bright by. You understand? Because this guy, I don't know what really system he put in place, and he put going on TV and showing people, crime only decrease and crime only decrease. But every single day you go on the road, you got to be scared going on the road. Why is it that there's some video you guys just put up there that just clearly show what's going on, and the people that they harass is normal working class people, and the people that in the security force and in the army and all of that, those are the ones that created the crime. And they fail to realize that. And the other thing is, what happens to them? Because let me say, it's a soldier get caught up in something. They got a special way to treat them. But you know, if you got to take a $20 or $15 for somebody, you will force them to jail.
Okay, caller. All right, thank you. Thank you for coming through.
Okay.
And, this reminds me of the situation we had the other day when attorney at law Sanjeev Dattadin is taking the oil companies to court concerning the wages for the persons working on the rigs. And so, private employers are exactly that. They're private, and the employment contract between a worker and your private employer is between the two of you, as long as no laws are broken or violated. And so once they pay you above the minimum wage and so on, there's not much you can do. And a lot of employers do take advantage of an economy that is declining and persons who are looking for work. But I do urge all workers out there to know your rights, at least know your basic rights, to contact the ministry in charge of labor. I don't know how good they are. They don't seem to be very good at all. We don't have a Ministry of Labor. As a matter of fact, we had a Ministry of Labor. The Labor Ministry is now
Keith Scott looks after the
right, and it's now a
issues.
department. Labor is now a department, I believe, and so there are no protection for workers. But if you are being abused in your work relationship, I do urge people to reach out to labor, and at least to make sure that your NIS contributions and so on are being paid on your behalf. At least you're entitled to that. You want to add anything, or we
Oh, that's all right.
Caller, good evening. Hello? Hello? Caller, you're on the air.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Quick time. How was it? Name a security minister in the PPP that do better than Ramjatan. You had Roy there and you had Kadrat there. They did a better job than Ramjatan.
So are you claiming that Ramjatan is doing a good job?
Very much. The police force, got a police force
Uh-huh.
right now. You could trust them up to 80%.
Who you trusting? Everybody? What do you mean trust?
The police force are clean up the work by 80%. You tell them the
What do you mean? I don't understand what you mean by trust them.
Yeah, because crime has been on the decrease in this country.
Crime is on the decrease.
Yes.
Okay.
And you show me the proof that the crime rate is higher than in PVP time. You show it to me. You show me how much murders go unsolved. Look, the lady with the bomb bury her son, bury her daughter in the backyard. Who solved that crime when they go to office? When he buried the girl in the backyard in 4th Street. Yeah, it's gotta be real.
You want to tell me who killed the persons on the seawall?
Which part on this one?
The persons that were killed recently on the seawall in the car that was shot up. Was that
that's the job of the police?
Okay, so that wasn't an extrajudicial killing, because when that happened under the PPP was extrajudicial killings.
I'm not here to debate that. I'm telling you that the crime rate, you could go from there.
Oh, it's the crime rate. It's the crime rate we're talking about.
Right? And you
It's
can-
the crime rate we're talking about.
Increase. And another thing I want to touch with you on the Toshao thing. The people tell y'all in the place to stand up to the national anthem, and y'all are saying y'all are for this country. So why y'all didn't stand up when the anthem wasn't playing?
No.
Disrespectful
It has nothing to do with the anthem. The persons who were there did not stand when David Granger entered the room. And they did not do so because he is holding on to office unconstitutionally. And so if you want respect must not only be given to you because you have on a uniform or because you claim to be the president. And sure, we respect the office of the president, but we certainly have no respect for the man who is holding that office unconstitutionally.
Saying the Constitution, right? Saying the executive president in this country.
What's that?
In this country, what's the executive president mean? What is the executive? Explain it to me.
What is the executive? He is the executive president.
Okay.
David Granger.
Yeah, how you are the executive?
You seem to want to make Granger out to be a monarch,
Look at
right?
that.
Because he is holding on to office unconstitutionally. And you know that, caller. You can admit that to yourself. The president and the cabinet should have resigned since the passage of the no confidence motion.
We cannot wake up in the country and keep elections tomorrow. Yeah,
Nobody's saying,
No, but
nobody's
saying that.
and we agree with you.
Since December 2018 was the passage of the no confidence motion.
And
Come on, we have to get serious here now.
supposed to be ready at any
At
time
any
to have
time.
elections.
How come in the past, all the previous elections, from the time Parliament was dissolved to when elections were called, it was held within 3 months? How come GCOM could have held all the previous elections in less than 90 days, and suddenly in 2018, when there's a passage of a no confidence motion, GCOM is not ready for elections? In 1997, this same GCOM chairman ordered elections, ordered the PPP to hold elections within 3 months. Nobody had to ask GCOM in 1997 if they're ready. She ordered elections by a certain date, and those elections were held within that time.
But in 1997, we didn't ask for a no list. 92, we never asked for a no list. So this is the kind of things that take up the time.
Yes, 1992, a list was
Caller,
asked for. Yes, it
Caller,
was.
there was a no
Yes, it
confidence motion, no confidence vote taken in our National Assembly. That
Agreed.
trumps everything, caller. So whether there was supposed to be house to house or whether there was supposed to be anything else going on, all of that has to stop. And after the vote has been taken, we must go to elections within 3 months. The Constitution says so.
Okay.
And so the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and we have to obey it.
And one thing more, Susan, I always said that
Yes,
you
sir.
opening your program, right?
Yes,
How
sir.
great to say somebody will pay for the protest at Pegasus.
Mhm.
And today, 5 people lose their life. What the accidents have to do with Granger?
I am drawing an analysis. Persons pay every time the barricades go up, every time these hundreds of police officers have to be deployed to protect the president, persons pay. That's what I mean by they're paying. They're inconvenienced, those persons today, because of the convoy that President Granger has now, and the manner in which they drive down the road. Those persons paid with their lives today for that kind of recklessness. And it's very, very sad, and I certainly wish it had never taken place.
Okay, Susan, you enjoy it, have a good
All right, caller. Thank you very much for coming through. So that was a very nice interactive session, and unfortunately, the operator is saying to me that we have to go. But thank you, caller, for coming through. I always like people ask questions, and we could respond, and we could have a very nice civil conversation. It doesn't matter which side of the divide you're on. We're all Guyanese, and I know that caller, and we all have the best interests of our country at heart. Gregory, we have to go. Any last thoughts?
I just hope that we can, between now and March, things can remain calm,
Yeah.
and we can have a peaceful elections, and PPP will win the elections. But between now and then, I hope we stay civil towards each other. As Susan said, at the end of the day, we're all Guyanese, and we must remember that regardless of which side of the political spectrum we're from. So that's just it. And good night to the callers, and that's
Okay.
it.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for keeping my company. And to the viewers out there, have a very good night. Have a very safe week. Please take care of yourselves and your families. Be safe, and I'll see you next week. Have a good night.